watching ANews. I'm Elif Saatçoğlu and we're broadcasting live from Istanbul. Let's start the bulletin with headlines. War-weary Gazans are facing increasing hardships as essential goods become scarce amid ongoing Israeli military offensive. Defense Secretary Hegseth about plans to kill a Houthi militant leader in Yemen 2 hours before a military operation meant to be shrouded in secrecy, according to screenshots of a chat released by The Atlantic on Wednesday. President Donald Trump has announced new import taxes of 25% on cars and car parts coming in the U.S. Gaza health authorities reported 792 new deaths and 1,663 injuries since the resumption of Israeli airstrikes on March 18th.
The Gaza-based health authorities said in a statement on Tuesday that 792 people had been killed and 1,663 others injured in the Gaza Strip since the Israeli military resumed intense airstrikes across the enclave on March 18 after a 2-month ceasefire. Over the past 24 hours, 62 lost their lives and 296 wounded people were brought to hospitals across Gaza, bringing the total death toll to 50,144, with 113,704 injured since fighting erupted in early October 2023, the statement said. Also on Tuesday, the Israel Defense Forces issued a statement saying that since the Israeli army resumed military operations in Gaza earlier this month, it is estimated that more than 150 members of Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups have been killed. The statement said that at present, Israeli ground forces are carrying out operations in many locations across Gaza. The Israeli army has advanced to the Netzarim corridor in the central Gaza Strip and occupied about half of the corridor. On the same day, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a statement that he had approved the operational plan for IDF's Gaza division to continue the military operations in Gaza. Katz said the decision was made after meeting with several senior military officials.
Palestinians are fleeing Gaza's Jabalia as deadly Israeli attacks resume following the collapse of a ceasefire.
On foot, in vehicles and on animal-led carts, Palestinians fled Gaza's Jabalia after the Israeli military issued evacuation orders.
على هذه الزرقاء ومعي 7 أنفار والحمد لله يعني انجينا من القصف وشردين لا معنى أي حاجة ولا محتاجة في الشلة بطانية هيها ويمكن مخدتين معايا.
The Israeli military resumed its attacks on Gaza a week ago, shattering a 2-month ceasefire. Since then, nearly 700 people, mostly women and children, have been killed.
يعني اليوم من نزوح لنزوح لنزوح يعني حنفضل في قطاع غزة كل ما فيش استقرار يعني من جبلية المعسكر ومن جبلية قاعدين بننزح يعني وين بدنا نروح لا دار المدرسة نقعد فيها ولا دار لأنه كله هالقيت تحت الاستهداف يعني الليلة يعني ناس ما لهم الذنب يعني وقع عليهم صاروخ احنا ايش ذنبنا بهذا الحرب.
Most of Gaza's 2.3 million population has already been displaced by the fighting multiple times during nearly 18 months of war and is facing worsening shortages of food and water after Israel suspended aid deliveries earlier this month.
Muslims scattered at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque on Wednesday night to hold prayers overnight to mark Laylat al-Qadr.
Approximately 180,000 Muslim worshippers observed Laylat al-Qadr at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem. Laylat al-Qadr, or the Night of Destiny, is celebrated on the 27th third night of the Ramadan fasting month, which according to Islamic tradition is the anniversary of the day on which some of the most significant verses in the Quran were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. The prayers took place amid rising tensions after Israel resumed its military offensive in the Gaza Strip, which threatens to be even deadlier and more destructive than the last. The faithful formed rows to kneel in prayer at the foot of the Golden Dome of the Rock on the sprawling mosque compound. As Muslims filled the mosque for prayers, the surrounding streets of the Old City came alive. The Old City is part of East Jerusalem, captured by Israel along with the West Bank and Gaza Strip in the 1967 Mideast War. Israel has since annexed the sector, though Palestinians seek it and the territories for an independent state.
The United Nations called for the restoration of a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip for the benefits of civilians, citing increasingly strict restrictions on humanitarian aid delivery imposed by Israeli forces on the besieged enclave.
Israeli forces have expanded the areas within Gaza where they're requiring humanitarian organizations to coordinate their movements with them in advance, routinely denying such requests. Between the 18th and the 24th of March, 40 out of nearly 50% coordinated aid movements were denied. That's 82%. And today, half of our coordinated missions were denied. That's 5 out of 10. OCHA warns that when humanitarian access is denied, tasks as critical as picking up essential supplies or refueling bakeries are effectively blocked. We don't want to go backwards, right? There was a ceasefire that was enacted. Hostages were released, right? Families were united. Prisoners were released on the Israeli side, Palestinian prisoners. Humanitarian aid flooded in, and you saw the immediate benefits to civilians, right, of the ceasefire. That's what we want to go to. We do not want to go back to scenes of open conflict.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth texted about plans to kill a Houthi militant leader in Yemen 2 hours before a military operation meant to be shrouded in secrecy, according to screenshots of a chat released by The Atlantic on Wednesday.
Texting war plans.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth continued to insist on Wednesday that no classified information was shared in a group chat on Signal that mistakenly included a journalist. This after screenshots of a chat released by The Atlantic showed Hegseth posted highly sensitive plans to kill a Houthi militant leader in Yemen 2 hours before the military operation was carried out. But Hegseth, en route to Guam, continued to dismiss concerns about sharing sensitive information on a commercial messaging app.
There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information. You know who sees war plans? I see them every single day. My job, as it said atop of that, everybody's seen it now, team update, is to provide updates in real time. General updates in real time, keep everybody informed. That's what I did.
On a visit to Jamaica, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was also part of the group chat, acknowledged to reporters that a mistake was made, but dismissed concerns about any impact on the military operation.
Obviously, someone made a mistake. Someone made a big mistake and added a journalist.
Is it classified, the information?
Well, the Pentagon says it was not. And not only did it say it was not, they make very clear that it didn't put in danger anyone's life or the mission.
Earlier, the country's top intelligence chiefs faced another grilling on Capitol Hill about the incident, this time from House Democrats, including Representative Jason Crow.
It is completely outrageous to me that administration officials come before us today with impunity, no acceptance of responsibility, excuse after excuse after excuse. It is outrageous and it is a leadership failure, and that's why Secretary Hegseth, who undoubtedly transmitted classified, sensitive operational information via this chain, must resign immediately.
In the other chamber, Senator Roger Wicker, a Republican who leads the Pentagon's Oversight Committee in the Senate, joined calls for an independent investigation into the matter and said the texts appeared so sensitive that, quote, I would have wanted it classified. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt downplayed the controversy.
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff.
The White House also played down the idea that Hegseth or others would lose their jobs, saying President Donald Trump still had confidence in them.
President Donald Trump said his national security advisor Mike Waltz took responsibility for the leak of U.S. attack plans against the Houthis and distanced himself from the fallout over the controversy.
They want us to stop so badly, and they've got to stop. They've got to say no mas. But I can only say that the attacks, it's attacks every day, every night. It's not just the one. You're talking about one. The attacks have been very successful, even beyond our wildest expectations. We've hit them very hard, very successfully, and we're going to do it for a long time. We're going to keep it going for a long time. Want to find if there's any mistake or if a signal doesn't work. It could be that signal is not very good. It's a company. Maybe it's not very good. I think we'd rather know about it now. Well, yeah, Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility, I would imagine. Had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike. But again, the attacks were unbelievably successful, and that's ultimately what you should be talking about, I think. Mike he took responsibility for it. Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this. Hegseth. How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do. Look, it's all a witch hunt. Here we are talking about some of the greatest business deals ever made. The greatest companies in the world are moving into the United States, and you want to ask about whether or not Signal works. I don't know that Signal works. I think Signal could be defective, to be honest with you. And I think that's what we have to, because you use Signal, and we use Signal, and everybody uses Signal, but it could be a defective platform, and we're going to have to find that out.
Now we'll deep delve into the situation. Political analyst Ross Feingold joining us live from Taipei to discuss the United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's visit in Asia. Ross, thank you so much for joining us here on ANews once again.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about the visit of the Hegseth. What will be the primary topics on Hegseth's agenda during his visit to Japan and Philippines?
Japan and the Philippines are treaty allies of the United States. They both have significant security issues at the moment. Philippines and Japan are both concerned about China's movements in the East China Sea or the South China Sea. And Japan is also concerned about North Korea. So it's a new administration. It's a new Secretary of Defense. And this visit to Philippines and Japan is really a get-to-know-you, that those two countries and their defense officials have to get to know Secretary of Defense Hegseth. He's new to the region. His previous experience was not in the Asia-Pacific region, so he's a bit of a mystery to these treaty ally countries. So it's understandable that he's making a trip out to the region to get to know his counterparts from Philippines and Japan.
So what are some of the most recent developments in the South China Sea territorial dispute then?
Well, we continue to see a lot of naval movement. We continue to see the Philippines fishermen being challenged by the Chinese Navy or the Chinese Coast Guard or what's called the Chinese Maritime Militia. As of now, because it's still early days for the Trump administration, there's one significant question mark, which is how frequently will the United States Navy be operating in the South China Sea? They did frequently during the first Trump administration. The Biden administration continued that, and we'll have to wait and see in the coming weeks and months how often the U.S. Navy will be sailing through or conducting joint exercises with other countries in the South China Sea. Obviously, that's something that China is going to be watching very, very closely.
And what does the United States aim to achieve in its foreign policy efforts in the context of South China Sea? Because you said that China is going to watch, but what is the aim of all of these?
The United States government likes to define it very simply, which is a free and open Indo-Pacific. So free and open so that commercial ships could sail through. The sovereignty or the territorial seas of the various countries are respected, and that there's generally an atmosphere that's free from coercion. And clearly the feeling from the Philippines and other countries in the region is that China is sailing through. They're showing their naval strength or their Coast Guard strength on an ongoing basis. And really, the navies of the region don't have the ability to push back on that on their own. They really need the partnership of the United States.
Well, let's talk about the chat leak incidents as well, because do you think that the United States is handling it perfectly, or do you think that there will be measures to be enforced to prevent similar incidents in the future?
Certainly, the Trump administration is using the tactics of President Trump, which is no surprise. That's to deny and to go on the attack. And that's usually what President Trump does when he's accused of some kind of wrongdoing. So in this case, they've called the reporter who was added into the chat group through no fault of his own. They've called him a sleazebag and a loser. And as President Trump has said in recent hours, when he received questions from the media, he'd like the media to focus on the success of the U.S. attacks on the Houthis in Yemen and not focus on this issue. But clearly, Democrats in Congress, both in the House and the Senate, they're going to keep talking about this. Republicans in the House and Senate, maybe they're going to give a pass to the Trump administration. It's really unlikely that they're going to take on the Trump administration or get into an antagonistic investigation with the Trump administration. One more important point, though, it does kind of overshadow Secretary of Defense Hegseth's visit to the Asia-Pacific region. No one's going to be talking about that. Everyone is going to be talking about the signal incident for the next few days.
Well, when you consider this incident, what would you say that it is this kind of thing never happened before, is it? Do you think that it is going to affect the cabinet? Do you think that it is going to affect Donald Trump in the closed doors, because he said that he wasn't related and he withdrew from the conversation? But inside the closed doors, he's probably furious about this, because if Trump is focusing on so much to military operations are a big deal for him. So what would you say, is he going to react on it or not?
It's fair to say that he's angry at National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, who has acknowledged responsibility for bringing in the reporter into the chat group. There's another issue here, which is separate from who brought the reporter into the chat group, which is, why were they using Signal instead of something even more secure? Signal might be secure enough for me or you, but it's probably not secure enough for discussing sensitive or even classified national defense information, which is what the parties were discussing in this case. So I think it's fair to say that Trump is angry at Waltz, but probably Trump will get over it. He's very happy with the team that he's built, whether that's for domestic policy, foreign policy, or national defense. And it looks like this is going to be the go-forward team. He's not going to, the chances of firing someone over this is pretty remote.
Well, thank you, Ross, for your insights, and thank you for sparing your time and joining us here on ANews.
Thank you.
Let's continue with our news. Greece is facing diplomatic scrutiny after offensive slogans were chanted by military cadets during the National Day parade in Athens, with Ankara formally requesting an explanation over Athens over the provocative remarks targeting Türkiye.
Türkiye has formally requested an explanation from Greece following the chanting of offensive slogans during a military parade in Athens. The parade, held on Tuesday to celebrate Greece's National Day, witnessed Greek military cadets shouting slogans such as "Cyprus is Greek," alongside other remarks targeting Türkiye. These chants, deemed as provocative and offensive by Ankara, have raised diplomatic concerns between the two countries. The Turkish Foreign Ministry condemned the incident, describing it as an unacceptable provocation aimed at undermining Turkish-Greek relations. Officials in Ankara have called for Greece to provide a clear explanation regarding the behavior of its military personnel. Greek Defense Ministry sources confirmed that a disciplinary investigation has been launched by the Naval Forces Command into the incident. The investigation will examine how members of the Greek Armed Forces came to shout the offensive slogans during the National Day celebration. Diplomatic observers note that the Greek government's response will be crucial in determining how the situation evolves and whether it affects ongoing dialogue between the two nations. As Greece moves forward with its investigation, Türkiye has made it clear that it expects accountability and a formal explanation from Athens to ensure that such incidents do not derail efforts to improve bilateral relations.
Russia's Kursk region remains tense as conflict continues near the border, with residents struggling to rebuild their lives amid ongoing uncertainty.
This is what remains of a cultural center in Rilsk, in Russia's Kursk region, about 16 miles from the Ukrainian border. The town's mayor, Sergei Kirsanov, said it had over 500 seats and that concerts, performances, and plays were held there. He said a Ukrainian missile attack destroyed the building on December 20th. Russia said the missiles were US-made HIMARS and that 6 people were killed and a dozen were injured in the attack. Ukraine launched an incursion into Kursk last August, more than 2 years into Moscow's invasion of its neighbor. Ukraine's move shocked the region, which hasn't seen conflict since World War II. Now, after Moscow launched a lightning offensive to retake Kursk this month, Russia is close to expelling the last Ukrainian troops. The damage that has been unleashed on towns and cities in Kursk has brought home the horrors of war long suffered by Ukrainians. Reuters is among the first international news outlets to gain access to the Kursk region since Russia began its offensive. Russian officials did not check reporting material, but the Reuters team was informed in advance it could not report about the Russian military in the region or gather visuals of Russian forces. With air raid sirens becoming part of the daily soundtrack of life, many Kursk residents, just like Ukrainians, crave a return to normality. Kurnosov said the thousands evacuated from his town are starting to come back.
People live with a sense of fear, with a sense of anxiety. Of course, many have already gotten used to this feeling, unfortunately. And so in principle, at first people left. Now they have returned and are slowly starting to get their lives back on track. It is spring now. Fieldwork in vegetable gardens will begin soon, so people are returning.
Ukraine initially seized some 540 square miles of territory in Kursk, according to Russian generals. But within weeks, the area under Ukraine's control shrank as Russia piled in forces. A battlefield map from an authoritative Ukrainian site showed Ukraine controlled less than 32 square miles as of March 23rd. Even with U.S. President Donald Trump vowing to end the 3-year war in Ukraine, many in the Kursk region remain skeptical of any long-lasting peace, like Yekaterina.
You know, I want to hope for this ceasefire, but I think that in the near future, there will be no peace in our region. Because, you know, simply speaking, I think that they will continue to throw stones and everything at us for a long time, even if they do not have the means to do so or any help, but there will still be some kind of hostility towards our people, towards our land, for a very long time. Therefore, I think it is still too early to talk about peace.
The United States has announced separate agreements with Russia and Ukraine to cease fighting in the Black Sea and pause attacks against energy targets, with Russia saying the United States has agreed to help it lift the series of Western sanctions.
Russia said on Tuesday that the US has agreed to help it lift Western sanctions as part of preconditions for a maritime security deal in the Black Sea, which aims to stop strikes over the area and ensure safe passage for commercial shipping, as well as preventing the use of commercial vessels for military purposes. So, what does Russia say it will gain? Russia is the world's top exporter of wheat and fertilisers, and it said the sanctions the US will help to lift affect these industries, as well as shipping. This includes, Moscow says, the removal of curbs on companies producing and exporting food and fertilisers, the lifting of restrictions on financial and insurance companies involved in the international trade of these products, and against Russian-flagged vessels involved in the food and fertiliser trade. The deal is effectively a return to the Black Sea Initiative, struck in 2022, with the help of Turkey and the UN. That deal helped Ukraine get its grain and other agricultural products to market, while allowing for inspections of shipping in the area to prevent arms supplies. Kyiv complained that Russia was using the inspections to hold up shipments, allegations which Moscow denied. Russia then withdrew from the deal in 2023, complaining that its own food and fertiliser exports faced serious obstacles. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia and Turkey had subsequently agreed to a return to the deal, but that Ukraine had suddenly pulled out. Moscow is not currently facing serious problems getting its grain to the market by the Black Sea, and its wheat and fertiliser exports themselves are not subject to Western sanctions. But Moscow has said that restrictions on payments, logistics and insurance have amounted to a barrier. Still, Russia's expected to send around 40 million tonnes of wheat to the global markets this season, and it aims to boost its overall agricultural exports by 50% by 2030. Diplomats told Reuters that most of the curbs listed by the Kremlin related to those enforced by the European Union. The Commission said the bloc did not have sanctions targeting agricultural goods, but did have, quote, prohibitive tariffs on grain products imported from Russia and Belarus.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro will stand trial for allegedly conspiring to overthrow the government after he lost the 2022 election.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro will stand trial for allegedly conspiring to overthrow the government after he lost an election in 2022, the Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday. A 5-judge panel decided unanimously to put Bolsonaro on trial. The court proceedings are expected later this year. If found guilty, Bolsonaro could face a long prison sentence. In his opening remarks on Wednesday, Justice Alexandre de Moraes screened dramatic footage of Bolsonaro's supporters storming government buildings. The violent scenes unfolded just a week after the inauguration of President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in January 2023. Moraes said the insurrection was a result of Bolsonaro's, quote, systemic effort to discredit the election he lost and then conspire to overturn using violence, with the help of senior military officers and cabinet members. Bolsonaro, who was president from 2019 to 2022, is accused of 5 crimes, including an alleged attempt to violently abolish the democratic rule of law and a coup d'etat. He has denied any wrongdoing and denounced the case as politically motivated. Bolsonaro spoke at a press conference in Brasilia shortly after the ruling.
Today, I hope to put a final point on this. It looks like there is something personal against me. The accusation is very serious and unfounded.
Wednesday's ruling, roughly a month after Brazil's top prosecutor presented charges, reflected an extraordinary pace for a top court that often takes years to decide major cases. The speed reinforced views that the justices are keen to wrap up the trial before the 2026 presidential campaign gets underway. The court also accepted charges against 2 retired generals, Bolsonaro's former defense minister and his former chief of staff. It's the first time high-ranking military officials in Brazil will be put on trial for attempting to abolish democracy. Bolsonaro has insisted he will run for president again next year. That's despite a ruling barring him from running for public office until 2030 for his efforts to discredit the country's voting system.
Workers cut down trees and put up protection around a temple in South Korean city of Andong, one of the hardest hit areas as wildfires continue to rage across southern regions of the country.
Firefighters preventatively sprayed down a UNESCO World Heritage in South Korea's southeast, where wildfires destroyed more than 300 structures and killed dozens of people. Strong winds and smoke-filled skies forced authorities in the southeastern city of Andong to order evacuations in 2 villages, including Puncheon, home to the Haho folk village. Aerial footage showed the damage the blazes had left in a settlement in North Gyeongsang province. Multiple wildfires have been raging across South Korea's southeastern regions since last Friday. Hardest hit areas are Andong City and neighboring counties of Uiseong and Sancheong, and the city of Ulsan. The wildfires have burned over 36,000 hectares of land in the southeast, the government's Disaster Response Center said in a report Thursday. As of Thursday morning, the center said authorities were mobilizing more than 9,000 people and about 120 helicopters to battle the wildfires. Officials said earlier this week that firefighters had extinguished most of the flames from the largest wildfires in key areas, but wind and dry conditions allowed them to spread again. The Korea Forest Service has raised its wildfire warning to the highest level, requiring local governments to assign more workers to emergency response, tighten entry restrictions for forests and parks, and recommend that military units withhold live fire exercises.
Kilauea volcano in Hawaii has resumed its sporadic eruption, sending lava flowing from its summit caldera.
Lava began bubbling out of Hawaii's most active volcano once again as Kilauea's sporadic eruption resumed. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory said in a statement that the eruption restarted when molten rock began pouring out of a vent in Kilauea's summit caldera. The lava was contained within the caldera inside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and wasn't affecting any residential areas. The volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii has been erupting on and off since December 23. Kilauea is one of 6 active volcanoes in Hawaii, including one that is submerged underwater. The largest is Mauna Loa, which is also on the Big Island and which erupted in 2022.
This is all of the world news for this hour. Now we continue with World of Economy and Sports, and I will see you next hour.
US President Donald Trump said Wednesday that a 25% tariff for imported cars is coming April 3rd, a trade war escalation he's been threatening for weeks. Auto industry experts say the move will drive up prices and stymie production. Nearly half of all cars sold in the US last year were imported, according to research firm Global Data. Trump, who sees tariffs as a way to raise revenue to offset his promised tax cuts and to revive a long-declining U.S. industrial base, spoke about his plan at the White House.
This will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped and they're moving them to our country.
Meanwhile, Trump said in a proclamation he'll grant a reprieve of up to a month for imports of auto parts. They'll be subject to tariffs on a later specified date, but no later than May 3rd. Trump's announcement drew swift condemnation from the European Union, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called it a direct attack on Canadian workers.
We will defend our workers. We will defend our companies. We will defend our country, and we will defend it together.
The U.S. imported $474 billion worth of automotive products in 2024, including $220 billion in passenger cars. The biggest suppliers were all close U.S. allies: Mexico, Japan, South Korea, Canada, and Germany. In Asia morning trade Thursday, automakers led losses on the Tokyo Stock Price Index. Toyota shares lost more than 3% to become the biggest drag, while Honda and Nissan also fell. Meanwhile, Mazda shares fell 6.4% to become one of the worst performers in the Nikkei. The Center for Automotive Research says the new vehicle levies are likely to drive costs of cars higher for consumers by thousands of dollars. They say it will hit new vehicle sales and result in job losses, since the U.S. automotive industry relies heavily on imported parts. The auto tariffs will follow the day after April 2nd, when Trump is also expected to announce global reciprocal tariffs. Those are aimed at the countries responsible for the bulk of the U.S. trade deficit. However, the U.S. president said on Wednesday the measures may not be the like-for-like levies he has been pledging to impose.
No, we're going to make it all countries, and we're going to make it very lenient. I think people are going to be very surprised. It'll be, in many cases, less than the tariff that they've been charging us for decades.
Since taking office on January 20th, Trump has announced and delayed tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
Each one of the Detroit three, Stellantis, GM, and Ford, have different footprints in North America. Ford being the one that has most of the U.S. production as a percentage of their whole mix that they build in North America. So they're impacted differently depending on what tariffs are applied. But what they all are consistently looking at is what does the tariff situation, the stack up of tariffs in whatever form they might be, if they're on steel, aluminum, on components, how does that affect their end cost and therefore what they are able to charge the consumer? And there have been studies that show that there could be a significant impact to the vehicle price and that the consumer may see that. What we're concerned about is the average transaction price of a vehicle is already at around $49,000, near an all-time high. So incremental or even major shifts in that pricing is going to affect demand, and that's a concern of us because that has a backward push on the supply chain with regards to production cuts and maybe employment cuts. But the industry also understands that the America First trade policy and the administration has some goals to onshore and to increase American manufacturing. It's the most high-tech consumer product on the face of the earth. And the more tech that goes into it makes it more complex, and it's safety first built. So it really is a methodical process to build and construct and design these vehicles because they have to be quality first and safety first all the time, and that's the way the industry operates. So if you inject the word uncertainty or instability or higher costs into this conversation, it is disruptive to the industry in the way it operates. I've talked to a few dealers in the Detroit metro community, and they have already seen a slowdown in showroom traffic. So it's a little bit fragile right now, and I think they're just watching it very closely to see how this transpires and how it impacts them, and therefore the consumer and the traffic in the showroom, the ability to purchase a vehicle.
Donald Trump says China could get a discount on tariffs if it agrees to a US takeover of TikTok. He floated the idea in comments Wednesday.
Maybe I'll give them a little reduction in tariffs or something to get it done, because every point in tariff is worth more money than TikTok.
TikTok parent firm ByteDance has an April 5th deadline to find a non-Chinese buyer for the short video app. Otherwise, it will face a US ban over national security concerns. That had been due to kick in just before Trump took office, but the new president delayed enforcement until April. With some 170 million users in the US, TikTok's fate is a big concern for many Americans. But getting Beijing's approval for any deal has always looked like a sticking point. Trump has repeatedly used tariffs as a bargaining chip and has imposed a new 20% levy on Chinese exports since returning to power. Now he thinks China might find a discount offer tempting.
Sounds like something I do.
Vice President J.D. Vance has said he expects the general terms of an agreement to be in place by April 5th. There was no immediate comment on Trump's incentive offer from TikTok.
U.S. stocks ended sharply lower on Wednesday, with the Dow dropping 0.3%, the S&P 500 shedding more than 1%, and the Nasdaq plummeting 2%. President Donald Trump late Wednesday announced plans for auto industry tariffs that could climb as high as 25%, widening the global trade war he kicked off this year. Shares of General Motors, down more than 3% at the close, tumbled another 5% in extended trading, with Jeep owner Stellantis suffering similar losses. Ford shares also lost ground after hours. Meanwhile, lack of clarity over reciprocal tariffs, set to begin on April 2nd, is continuing to create overall market turmoil, said Melissa Brown, Managing Director of Investment Decision Research at SimCorp.
Just the volatility, the uncertainty, are we going to have tariffs? Are we not going to have tariffs? Is taking its toll. Tariffs are, expected to be inflationary. Inflation, we don't want to see inflation going up. But I would also point out that over the last few years, when inflation was higher than it had been prior to that, the markets actually did okay. It didn't seem like it was inflation itself that was the problem. But I think more recently, it's the uncertainty about that inflation. You can't plan. You don't know what to do if you don't know what's going to happen.
Big tech took a big hit on Wednesday, with shares of Nvidia sliding almost 6% and Broadcom falling almost 5%. Shares of Tesla, which had enjoyed a recent rebound, dropped more than 5.5%. Other movers included Dollar Tree, up 3% after the discount retail chain said it was nearing a sale of its Family Dollar business to a consortium of private equity investors for about $1 billion. And shares of GameStop jumped more than 11.5% following its board's unanimous approval to incorporate Bitcoin as a Treasury reserve asset.
British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves said that she has rebuilt a £9.9 billion fiscal buffer that was wiped out by weaker economic forecasts and rising borrowing costs since her first full budget last year.
As a result of the steps that I am taking today, I can confirm that I have restored in full our headroom against the stability rule, moving from a deficit of £36.1 billion in 2025-26 and £13.4 billion in 2026-27 to a surplus of £6.0 billion in 27-28, £7.1 billion in 2028-29 and a surplus of £9.9 billion in 2029-30.
The public finances have been strained by slow economic growth and higher than expected borrowing costs in financial markets, driven largely by the policies of United States President Donald Trump. Without measures taken by the government, Reeves said that the government would have faced a deficit of £4.1 billion. Reeves is aiming to balance day-to-day public spending with tax revenues by 2030.
Yo entiendo la situación, entiendo, es un Brasil-Argentina y no hace falta hacer declaraciones para que el partido sea así. O sea que no fue por eso que jugamos así, para nada. Al contrario, y lo disculpo a Rafinha porque sé que no lo hizo a propósito, defiende a su selección, a su equipo y me parece que tampoco, lógicamente, después le damos importancia porque preferimos que el partido sea caliente, pero para nada. Argentina al final, con declaraciones o sin declaraciones, íbamos a jugar nuestro partido y ellos también. La evaluación, bueno, positiva, no solo porque se ganó, sino por cómo afrontamos los partidos. En Uruguay en dificultad, los primeros 20-25 minutos supimos no volvernos locos, sabiendo que el partido estaba así. Y después lo pudimos llevar a nuestro terreno y el segundo partido, bueno, que se jugó acá muy completo. Y no sé si es el mejor partido. Creo que la selección ha hecho muy buenos partidos y lo que pasa es que, claro, el rival hace que parezca aún más, y con nuestra gente, y eso es lo lindo, pero hemos jugado partidos muy buenos y de este nivel.
Responsabilidade ela é total sempre. Eu nunca vou deixar de estar à frente de qualquer condição, estando no comando de uma equipe ou de uma seleção. Isso daí é natural, que ninguém esperava por aquilo que nós vimos hoje, e a responsabilidade ela é toda minha. Tudo aquilo que nós planejamos, infelizmente, desde o primeiro minuto de jogo, não aconteceu. A seleção argentina foi superior em todos os sentidos. E peço aqui até desculpas ao torcedor brasileiro, porque a expectativa era muito diferente daquilo que nós vimos, daquilo que nós apresentamos. Mas eu não tenho dúvidas em afirmar que nós encontraremos um caminho. Isso daí todos os anos de vivência dentro do futebol, talvez seja o momento mais delicado, porém eu jamais desisto e sempre consegui encontrar caminhos importantes nos clubes que dirigi.
It has something to do with the recovery for the players. Okay, I'm not happy with this, or I'm not happy with this. And also when you see other leagues, how they handle it with the teams, with the clubs, they're playing in the Champions League, it's totally different than here. I think it's when you play in the Champions League, it's not about Real Madrid against Barca. It's about you know, to protect your team, your Spanish team. It's that they have success in this, but it's not. I cannot change it. Okay, I cannot change it, and we don't look about that. But it's only my opinion. Okay, when I'm here, and you ask me about that, because we play this. I said it always, no excuses. I don't want to speak about my reaction, okay? I think it's not good. But we have to accept it. It's like that, and they decide this, and of course, I think, yeah, well, we cannot change. We cannot change it. The club cannot change it. They said, okay, you have to play, and we have to play. I think maybe it's a task for the UEFA, for the FIFA, after international break, that they say, okay, it's necessary that the players have a rest. 2-3 days. So this is the only thing I think you can change it. But at the end, it's like that. We play. We have to play. And La Liga, they said, okay, play. And we say, yes, we do it.
Hi guys, it's Kylian Mbappe. Come to see me in Madame Tussauds in London. Oh, wow. Oh, the new jersey, even the new boots. Yeah. That's me. No, I love it, amazing. Handsome. Oh my God. You got everything, guys. It's really, really fun, man. Yeah. That's me. It's a big honor. I want to say thanks to all the people who work on it, to be part of the project, because it's a big achievement for me, a big honor to be part of the big Madame Tussauds family, and I'm really happy. And even more when you see the results, it's amazing. I'm really proud to be here and to see this. So it's a big day for me. I love to visit the city, go to the restaurant, to see a little bit the culture of the country, of the city, something that I like, because you know, when you're a football player, you travel a lot, and you love to see new culture, new people, new lifestyle. So it's always a pleasure to travel, in London. It's one of the best cities in the world, so it's good. Thank you to everybody. I thank you to everybody for all the work, because it's a perfect job, and I'm really happy with the results.
I mean, I see it for what it is. Chapter has ended, you know, I knew it had begun. But what I will say is, and like I always say, I'm very appreciative for my time here, the bonds that I've built here. And, you know, when you look down the road, I mean, this was a huge part of my career. So I continue to say that I'm very grateful, and I ain't spiteful for it towards nobody. Like I always say, I'm grateful for the opportunity. A lot of fan base. It's not bad. It's not all bad. Like I always say, I got a lot of love for the city, for the fan base here. The video was nice. I won't say that there was a lot of emotions, though. We definitely need 30 back. But we want them to be right. We're still expected to win. We got to put up a better effort than what we put up the last 2 games. But if he's back, I think it's a little bit different.
Kaylee Chelios in the broadcast booth.
Luke Hughes had 3 assists. Jesper Bratt chipped in with 2, and the New Jersey Devils ended their 3-game losing streak with a 5-3 win over the Chicago Blackhawks on Wednesday night.
Bastian gets back in the lineup.
Nathan Bastian, Timo Meier, Andre Pallet, Dawson Mercer, and Stefan Noesen scored for the Devils. Bratt has 4 assists in his last 3 games and a career-high 84 points this season. Jacob Markstrom made 21 saves. Nico Hischier extended his point streak to 8 games with an assist on Nosen's empty net goal. Hischier has 4 goals and 5 assists since March 11. Tyler Bertuzzi, Ilya Mikheyev, and Frank Nazar scored for Chicago, which has lost 8 of the last 10 games. Spencer Knight stopped 15 shots. New Jersey won both games against the Blackhawks this season, including a 4-1 win in their previous matchup on December 14.
5 to go. Push back by the
Sponsored by Halkbank. Sponsored by Halkbank.
The 99 Names of Allah. Gracious One, all beautiful names define you. If you don't divulge your beautiful names, my soul will be left in darkness. Let me be a witness to your names. Al-Wajid. O the mighty founder, there are no words to describe your existence. Existence exists with you. My existence isn't enough to describe your existence. Existence is thanking you. Your existence has no beginning. Beginnings start with you. Your existence has no end. Ends exist with you. There is no excuse for your existence. Moment begins with you. Leave me without me, but don't leave me without you. The 99 Names of Allah.